Imagine you wake up tomorrow and you are the owner of a restaurant. Sign a commercial lease, hire a head chef, open the doors, and watch the dining room fill up with hungry customers. But here's the strange part. Owning a restaurant is universally considered the most romantic dream in small business. Yet it is mathematically one of the toughest businesses to make consistently profitable. Around 60% of independent restaurants fail in their first year, and within 5 years, many have permanently shut their doors. Even operators who survive can work 80 hours a week while earning only a few cents in profit for every dollar that comes through the door. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly how that's possible, how restaurants actually make money on the inside, why a packed dining room still doesn't guarantee a profit, and why a restaurant isn't really just a food business, it's a real estate, labor, inventory, and operations game disguised as hospitality. Restaurants generally come in 3 primary models, and financially speaking, they are very different businesses. On the lower end, you have quick service restaurants, or fast food, which can cost roughly $250,000 to $500,000 to build out and depend heavily on high volume and extremely efficient service. In the middle, you have fast casual. Think places like Chipotle or a trendy local fast casual restaurant, which can cost anywhere from $500,000 to $1 million to open and relies on standardized preparation and fast customer turnover. But at the top end, and the dream that traps many first-time owners, is the full-service independent restaurant. To open a standard 80-seat full-service restaurant in a decent city location, your initial capital requirement can be enormous. You might be looking at $300,000 to $800,000 before selling a single appetizer. You could spend $100,000 equipping a commercial kitchen with ventilation systems, grease traps, refrigeration, and freezers. Another $75,000 on interior design, dining tables, dishes, furniture, and point-of-sale systems. $50,000 on architectural plans and permits, and potentially tens of thousands more for licensing and other startup costs. Many first-time owners finance a significant portion through personal savings, partner equity, SBA-backed financing, or commercial debt. That means before your head chef chops a single onion, the business may already be carrying thousands of dollars in monthly debt and fixed expenses. So how does the money actually flow in, and where does it all go? Let's break down a full-service restaurant generating $1 million a year in gross revenue, which sounds like a fantastic business on paper. That works out to roughly $83,000 a month, or about $2,700 a day. If the average customer spends $35, you need roughly 78 customers every day just to reach that revenue level. On the surface, bringing in $83,000 a month sounds like printing cash. But running a restaurant is like pouring water into a bucket filled with holes. In the restaurant world, everything is heavily influenced by a critical metric known as prime cost, which combines food and beverage costs with labor costs. In a healthy restaurant, management works hard to keep prime cost under control, because once food and labor consume too much of sales, there is very little left to pay rent, utilities, insurance, maintenance, technology, marketing, debt, taxes, and ultimately the owner's profit. Let us look at the first half of prime cost, food and beverage expenses, or COGS. Food costs can consume roughly 30% of every dollar brought in. If a customer orders a $30 ribeye steak dinner, the raw ingredients, the steak, potatoes, butter, and garnish might cost around $9. But here is the trick experienced operators use to survive. Different menu items can carry dramatically different profit margins, and menu design becomes a psychological battle for profitability. Items like pasta, soup, and fountain drinks can carry extremely high margins. A bowl of fettuccine Alfredo selling for $18 might cost only a few dollars in ingredients to produce, while premium proteins such as seafood and filet mignon can have significantly higher food costs. To protect the overall margin, owners use menu engineering to balance high-cost items with high-margin specialties. strategically positioning profitable dishes where customers are more likely to notice them, and using descriptions, boxes, and other visual elements to influence purchasing decisions. Then comes one of the most powerful profit centers in full-service restaurants, the bar. Alcohol can carry much higher gross margins than many food items. Liquor costs may represent only around 12 to 15% of the selling price, while draft beer and wine can also produce attractive margins. A $14 cocktail, for example, might contain only a few dollars worth of spirits and mixers, leaving a substantial gross margin before labor and other operating expenses. This is why restaurants with strong beverage sales can have a significant advantage over restaurants that rely almost entirely on food. While food revenue helps support the kitchen, beverage sales can contribute disproportionately to the money left over after direct costs. Speaking of payroll, that brings us to the second and often most difficult half of prime cost, labor. Labor can consume another 30 to 35% of gross revenue in a full-service restaurant. You have the front-of-house staff, servers, bussers, hosts, and bartenders, and the back-of-house team, line cooks, prep cooks, dishwashers, and the executive chef. Out of $83,000 in monthly revenue, tens of thousands can disappear into wages, payroll taxes, benefits, workers' compensation, and overtime. And labor is an especially difficult expense because restaurants cannot simply switch employees off when demand falls. If a severe rainstorm hits on a Tuesday night and only 10 customers walk through the door, the restaurant may still need its chef, cooks, dishwasher, and service staff on the clock. That means labor costs can suddenly consume a huge percentage of that day's revenue, potentially wiping out profits generated during a busy Friday or Saturday. Now stack up the rest of the expenses. If roughly 60% of sales goes toward prime cost, that leaves about 40% of revenue to cover everything else. On an $83,000 monthly revenue base, that's roughly $33,000 remaining. But you don't get to keep that money. Now you have to pay rent, utilities, insurance, repairs, cleaning, technology, marketing, licenses, credit card processing fees, equipment maintenance, debt payments, and all the other overhead required to keep the restaurant open. And this is where the restaurant business becomes brutally clear. A restaurant can generate enormous sales and still have surprisingly little money left at the end of the month. First up is rent and occupancy, which includes commercial rent, property taxes, building insurance, and common area maintenance. In the industry, occupancy costs generally need to remain tightly controlled because every dollar spent on the building is a dollar that cannot contribute to profit. For our $1 million restaurant, imagine roughly $7,000 a month going toward occupancy. Then come utilities. Commercial kitchens are energy-intensive machines. Gas ranges, ovens, walk-in coolers, freezers, ventilation systems, and heavy air conditioning can run for hours every day, pushing electricity and gas bills into the thousands of dollars each month. Then you have point-of-sale software, credit card processing fees that can take roughly 2.5% to 3% from transactions, linen services, trash removal, pest control, marketing, music licensing, and equipment repairs. That commercial ice machine in the back might break down twice a year, and emergency refrigeration technicians can charge premium hourly rates just to diagnose the problem. When all of these operating expenses are combined, they can consume another significant portion of revenue. So let us do the final math on our seemingly successful, packed, $1 million restaurant. Imagine $300,000 going toward food and beverage ingredients, $320,000 toward labor and wages, $80,000 toward rent and building expenses, $40,000 toward utilities, $30,000 toward credit card processing, $30,000 toward repairs, maintenance, and marketing, $40,000 toward insurance, legal, and administrative expenses, and another $30,000 toward servicing the original loan used to open the restaurant. What remains? Roughly $40,000. That's a 4% net profit margin. Out of $1 million flowing through the register, the owner keeps only about 4 cents from every dollar after these expenses. And if sales fall by just 5% because of bad weather, road construction, weaker consumer spending, or a local economic slowdown, that $40,000 profit can disappear surprisingly quickly, potentially pushing the restaurant into negative cash flow. So why do so many restaurants fail even when their owners work relentlessly? It comes down to several mathematical traps that can destroy profitability. The first is spoilage and inventory leakage. Restaurant inventory is perishable. If a kitchen prepares 50 pounds of fresh fish that doesn't sell before it expires, hundreds of dollars of potential revenue can end up in the trash. Waste can also come from incorrect portions, overproduction, damaged ingredients, and poor inventory management. Then there is theft and unrecorded consumption. Free drinks, missing ingredients, unrecorded meals, and other forms of leakage can quietly increase food costs by several percentage points. In a business earning only a 4% net margin, even a small amount of uncontrolled waste can wipe out the owner's entire annual profit. The second trap is poor table turnover and capacity limits. A restaurant has a physical ceiling on how much revenue it can generate because it has a finite number of seats and a limited number of operating hours. If you have an 80-seat dining room and the average dinner service lasts 2 hours, the theoretical capacity is limited even before accounting for slow periods, no-shows, kitchen bottlenecks, and empty tables. A party of 4 that spends relatively little but occupies a table for several hours is consuming valuable capacity that could otherwise serve additional customers. Smart operators therefore focus on table turnover, seating efficiency, reservation management, menu design, and service speed. The goal isn't necessarily to rush customers out, but to make sure the restaurant's most valuable physical asset, the table, keeps generating revenue throughout the operating day. Because in the restaurant business, an empty table isn't just an empty chair, it's revenue that can never be recovered once that hour has passed. The third and perhaps most fatal trap is overcapitalization during the launch phase, combined with a lack of working capital. Many new owners spend almost every dollar they have just getting the doors open. They invest heavily in custom lighting, expensive furniture, elaborate decorations, premium equipment, and beautiful interiors, but leave themselves with almost no cash reserves. The problem is that a restaurant's financial performance can change dramatically after opening. During the first few months, a new restaurant can experience a honeymoon period where local curiosity and opening promotions bring unusually large crowds. Owners see the strong sales and assume the business has already proven itself. But by the 4th or 5th month, that initial excitement can fade, word of mouth settles into a normal pattern, and revenue may fall significantly toward its true baseline. If the owner spent nearly all available capital on the build-out and failed to maintain several months of operating cash reserves, a temporary slowdown can suddenly make it difficult to pay employees, suppliers, rent, and other bills. The business can become financially trapped before it ever has enough time to establish itself. So how do the most successful restaurant operators actually build significant wealth? They understand that scale and business model selection matter just as much as the food itself. Instead of relying entirely on one full-service location, successful operators can use their first restaurant as a proof-of-concept laboratory where they refine recipes, standardize preparation, measure labor requirements, optimize purchasing, and build repeatable operating systems. Once the model works, they can expand into additional locations, ideally within a manageable geographic area. Operating multiple restaurants can create purchasing advantages because larger orders may allow the company to negotiate better terms with food distributors and suppliers. Administrative functions such as accounting, payroll, marketing, management, and purchasing can also be centralized, allowing the business to spread certain overhead costs across multiple locations. And increasingly, some of the most interesting restaurant models don't depend on traditional dining rooms at all. Ghost kitchens and highly focused fast casual concepts can operate with smaller footprints, fewer front-of-house employees, and lower occupancy costs than traditional restaurants. By eliminating expensive dining areas and focusing heavily on takeout, delivery, or a narrow menu, operators can potentially build a more efficient cost structure. At the end of the day, owning a restaurant is a masterclass in extreme operational control. You are buying raw materials that can spoil within days, hiring an army of employees to transform those ingredients into finished meals, selling those meals from a location that costs money every month, and competing for customers who have countless alternatives. The restaurants that survive and scale aren't necessarily run by the best chefs or the most charismatic hosts. They're run by operators who understand the numbers, tracking food costs, labor hours, inventory waste, table turnover, pricing, purchasing, and cash flow with extraordinary precision. Because when your net margin is only a few cents on every dollar, one small mistake can erase the entire profit, and one well-designed system can multiply it.